Revelation 2431. From the 2nd of August 1942. Away from God. Powerlessness. Prayer and help. As long as the human being is still in a defensive position towards God and the good forces, he also lacks the strength to lead a God-pleasing way of life, for then he is also incapable of love and thus without an influx of strength. But he cannot develop progressively by his own strength, for this has to be achieved by love which supplies him with love again, that is strength from God. Thus working with love will always mean an approach to God. But without working with love the deity will be unattainable, thus the human being will be distant from God. Thus lack of strength is the cause when the human being does not lead his way of life in accordance with God's will. He is still under the spell of the adversary who wants to prevent him from turning towards God. However, this influence on the human being is permitted by God because the human being's will has to freely decide for God or his adversary. For no matter how much he is oppressed, his will remains free, and if he constantly becomes weaker, it is entirely his fault because he does not use this free will in the right way. He can remedy any weakness himself by praying for strength. But then he has to turn to God himself, thus he has to turn towards him and away from God's adversary, then strength will flow to him and then he can also work good through this strength. The powerless state is welcome to God's adversary. He finds no resistance if he drives the human being to do things which contradict divine will. And then he completely lacks the will to carry out good deeds. Thus, as long as he is under the adversary's spell, only prayer will help him and he will have to struggle with his weakness of will until he calls upon God from the bottom of his heart for help. If he takes the path to God, he will receive help, for then he will prove, his will, that he wants to join God and free himself from his adversary's influence. And help will come to him. Heartfelt prayer never goes unheard, and therefore heartfelt prayer helps in all spiritual and earthly adversities. For then he will receive strength and his life on earth, his actions and thoughts, will be blessed by God. Only the will is required. No human being is helplessly left to himself if he only desires help. But in order to request help, God has to be acknowledged as an omnipotent and loving entity, and this is what the human being does when he asks him for help. A pleading thought is already enough for him to receive the strength to pray more fervently for support, for assistance in his weakness of will. This is the battle the being on earth has to wage, this is the struggle with evil power in order to approach God. This is the decision of free will for or against God. Amen.